year. If we could skip a year, maybe this would be a good one, right? In our life, but still, the year happened. So I believe there were many things that are net positive after. Not, I know net positive, but at least some
I
positive
understand. Yeah.
coming out from the context we are living in our country and in the world and inside every single one of us. I think we had the chance to reframe our priorities, and I think that's always good.
I discovered a journal today called Cosmos with a K,
Hmm.
and it's sort of a journal for the emergence of what some people call the Great Turning, and some people call the Great Transition, and some people call one of the things they've done is to try to identify this emerging global movement
Happening.
happening, which I think is, this article was written before 2014, but I hear a lot more people talking about how COVID and the wildfires and
Mm.
other symptoms of climate change are just making it totally clear that the system isn't working, and it's time to recognize that and think about what the next system will be.
Mm.
And I read that just this morning, but I'm thinking that we really should think about how to affiliate e-NABLE with that larger movement. For a long time, I've been thinking about what's the way to characterize those of us who are doing what we do for assistive technology, but it may be that it's at a level up that we find the complete tribe and a more coherent definition of who we are.
Yeah, 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 and yeah, and enable being one arm or an being an arm in
An
the
arm
complete
of the
sense of
movement.
the
There you
word.
go.
Yeah, no pun
I agree.
intended, or I did.
And I think
But
one of the exciting things is just the way, to me, the way people are able to connect online. Because it's not just, at first the internet was all about accessing information, right? But we've moved into this phase where it's about connecting people. And that's what's exciting to me, because Eric was mentioning that there were some sort of positive side effects of the pandemic. I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like I'm closer to my family than I ever have been because of our ongoing weekly family Zoom calls. And I have, I'm very active in the music community doing open mics, and we moved those online. And so now we have people joining our open mics from England and from other states and, all over the place. So it's really interesting, the side effects that have come along, not all negative.
yeah,
That's a really interesting point about how local is no longer geographically local, and it may create
That's
an
right.
opportunity for more interconnections among these various tribes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen Jason Silva. This guy, he makes he's like a modern day philosopher, or he says it is. He's a pretty rad YouTube guy, and he makes podcasts, I think. But I don't know if it's his quote, but I heard it from him. Yeah, Jason Silva, and he said empathy is within the line of sight, right? Or lies within the lines of sight, or something like that. I can't
Yeah.
remember the perfect quote, but and it was from a really interesting video, which yeah is within the line of sight, and this was a couple of years ago, I believe 5 or 6 years ago. But afterward, that was quoted a lot with concerning with VR, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where experiences using virtual reality would allow you to not only see pictures to have empathy or videos to have empathy, but actually live within the reality of someone else. And
Yeah.
and that was before I. Now it feels weird to say that Zoom or Google Meet or whatever we had was weird 2 years ago, but it was weird. It was really,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was not something that I was used to, or it was I have a meeting in, like, it's a virtual meeting. Is it
Mm-hmm.
even a meeting? And but now is like you can connect, and this weekend, from I don't know if you know Patch Adams.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Patch Adams, well, from the movie, and he lives in Chicago, and we've met about 7 years ago and stay in contact. And his wife, she organized something which was called like the wormhole, and it was a 24-hour experience where it was a permanent Zoom call where there were different talks and different moments to share, but throughout a whole 24-hour meeting, right? So you were connected with people while you were, I don't know, preparing dinner and stuff like that. And the idea was that never stop sharing, like stay there. You could be there and just like share the moment of being there. And yeah, so maybe the way to feel connected is just shifting, and it's gonna shift in the next years. It's gonna be, yeah. We're not even realizing what is gonna happen. Yeah, it's interesting. And is there a way to make like continuous interaction? Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
That's something we've
Just a
talked
quick-
about.
Yeah, it's just a quick heads up. So there was an issue with the invite. I guess it went to last month's. So I apologize for that. Thanks Barry and Robbie for joining us. And we are recording. We're also streaming on YouTube. So I'll have to keep an eye open on comments for that. So with us, we have Eric. And earlier we had Mateo. Looks like he might have had to drop out. Hopefully he'll be back from Paraguay. They just finished their chapter spotlight, and it's really impressive stuff. So I'll share that in the chat if anybody hasn't gotten a chance to see it yet. If anybody has any questions for Eric and his team, I'll open the floor to him. I know he has a medical school exam in a few minutes, so he's going to have to dip out, but it's wonderful that you could join us from Paraguay.
Thank you. Yeah, it's at 1, but they told us like for protocol, I have to have my phone put it behind me for security issues and stuff like that. And yeah, so, but I might push it a little bit for like 35 or 40.
That's great.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
So maybe we can go around really quick and introduce ourselves. My name's Ben. I've been involved with e-NABLE the last 2 years, mostly focusing on media coordination and trying to help connect the chapters together. And I'm excited for this meeting. There will probably be other people popping in from my error, so I apologize. But I'll pass the mic to Eric.
Super. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do right now. So yeah.
Just maybe introduce yourself, how long
Okay,
you've been
yeah.
involved with e-NABLE, and then when you're done, maybe pick somebody else in the call and they can introduce themselves.
Okay, super. Okay, I'm Eric Decas. I'm from Asunción, Paraguay. And I think the person who introduced me to e-NABLE is actually here, I think was Jeremy Simon. And John. I think it was first Jeremy, or I cannot remember who of the other two were, but I'm pretty sure that Jeremy was the one that got us into 3D printing, but John was the first person that we were just talking all the time, and I think it was 2014, and it was a crazy adventure, because at the beginning it was Google Plus, and it was that Google Plus group where there was more will and more mindset than an actual path. But everything that happened in that moment started leading to people just grouping together in a way that was just it was just, I don't know, kind of like enzymes reacting to different situations and catalyzers that just in its randomness finished making something that they were always willing to do and they were planning to do. And it might sound like it's entropy, but it's not. It's more probability in a way where the situation and the context is created, and maybe it's even a little bit guided. Crazy things happen. So that's about what happened with us. We had the chance to be there with Fernando Valese. Me as a medical student, I was in the 3rd year of medical school, and Fernando was finishing engineering. And we both decided that we wanted to do one way or another, create something, create the 3D printer prosthetics that we were seeing. We were just seeing and saying, like, when is this crazy thing gonna arrive to Paraguay? Always arrives 10 years later, and with a price tag, huge price tag. And then we found this group that say, no, like, you can create right now. And it's like, how? 3D printers. And like, how? And then Jeremy just sent us, like, this is the printers you need and the plastic you would use. And after a couple of months, we arrived from I think we started talking on July or August, and by November we were printing our first device, which was the FlexiHand, a modified FlexiHand, and that's the device that we from Steve Wood, from Gyrobot, and from his AKA Gyrobot, and from that started a crazy adventure of years of in the making, when now we have a nonprofit that's official here in Paraguay, and that has handled more than 350 devices. We have hands, forearms, complete arms, and we have feet, we have legs. We've been working a lot on how to take the devices to a next step here in our country, where we managed to do the kind of regulations, but it's actually called recommendation, where we built an independent advisory board or something like that, or table, where we discussed about with physicians, engineers, with prostheticians, where they all try to destroy the 3D printer prosthetic idea. And in that way, we have to challenge those challenges, and we finished having as open as a recommendation as we could, so anyone can do it, but at the same time present a guideline for it to be taught in whatever someone would like to teach in schools and in medical school or in prosthetic school. We don't have, it's more it's not technical, it's more an apprenticeship in here, but it sent a precedent of the next to come. And so we had help from people from Germany that come here and volunteered. And so yeah, we went through an interesting line of work in this years. I forgot I had to only present myself. I just got carried away.
No, it's really helpful.
No, Jeremy Simon, it's your turn for or John for laughing too loud.
Let's start with Jeremy.
From your muted microphones.
All right, you caught me. All right. You want me to go, John? All right, so I'll be quick. I'm Jeremy Simon, longtime volunteer. I help a lot behind the scenes. I'd say my two areas of focus are 3D printing on the one hand, and sort of the business side of things on the other hand. I do a lot of project management stuff and things like that. But I'm a 3D printing enthusiast, and through my business, 3D Universe, get to play with a lot of different machines, a lot of different materials, and I'm always available to help however I can. So I'll pass it to you, John.
Yeah, can you hear me with this?
Yeah.
I've got a broken headset here. Okay. So I'm co-founder of e-NABLE. I crossed paths with Eric in the early days, was very impressed by his sort of community financing model, which we may talk about today, and crossed paths again at a Singularity University event where, as ever, I was sort of stunned to hear about all the good work they were doing. And now it's 3 or 4 years later, and it's still going. So it's all very interesting. And that's sort of my history of e-NABLE, is sort of stumbling into it in the early days and then continuing to re-stumble and see how much goes on and trying to help spread the word and make connections. And I will pass it to Mazvi, who's off camera.
Hey all. Yeah, hi.
Has a voice.
I do. I'm chapter leader of e-NABLE Lithuania and the sole developer on the hub. Pretty much it.
A man of many words. Who are you going to pass the torch to?
Barry.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? So I am an engineering and robotics teacher at a private STEM academy in Maryville, Tennessee. And we started our chapter 3 years ago now, more or less. It was started when I had 2 freshman young ladies become interested in the program. And those 2 young ladies have now gone on in the last 3 years to size, print, assemble, and personally deliver 3 arms to 3 young people. And about a week ago, while I was traveling out west, I received a message from another lady locally who is looking for a prosthetic for, I think, a 2nd grader. So a 6, 7, 8-year-old, something in there. I've not gotten more details. So we will be working as soon as students return to campus in about a week on that particular unlimited arm, I think. And that group of young ladies are all graduating seniors this year. And they have had lots of opportunities presented through the e-NABLE program. They're actually going for their senior projects. They're actually going to document as best they can all the best practices and procedures that they have learned throughout the years to basically try to make that program a little more sustainable here. We have some incoming freshmen, sophomores that are going to pick up that torch and run with it. But I just want to say, from a personal perspective, seeing the impact not only on the youth who are receiving prosthetics, but also, the impact on the lives of these high school kids who are working on this project and delivering those prosthetics, and just seeing firsthand, how you can change lives, has been really, really special. So we're excited about continuing to work in the program, and excited to have sort of some organization, some folks that I was excited to see the roundtable meeting start, and just some opportunities for some networking within the program, hopefully, so that we can continue to grow that opportunity here at our school as part of our educational platform. And I will pass it. Who's left? I think I saw somebody named
It's Robbie.
Connor.
Yeah.
Hey, Robbie.
I've done mute. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
do.
Oh, great. My name is Robbie O'Connor. I'm the chairman of the 3D Assist group, which is the Irish chapter of e-NABLE. We've been going since about 2015. We're based in the Technological University of Dublin. We have about 6 or so staff, permanent staff, and we cycle maybe a dozen or so students through every year. We try to avoid final year students, and we get all our first year and second year enthusiastic ones, as opposed to the ones who are just hanging on with the bare skin of the teeth coming into their final years. We're a registered charity in Ireland, and we're also unusually we're actually a registered medical device manufacturer within Ireland as well, because we're subject to the EU regulation, which makes it all a little bit complex. We've dealt with maybe 50 or so families, so we've issued maybe 70 or 100 hands and arms at this stage, as you all know well how it works. Other than that, we've other links with national groups like Child Vision, which is a national charity that looks after kids who are visually impaired. We've some other interesting kind of links with other children's hospices and stuff like this as well. So we kind of spread our wings out as much as we can. So other than that, we're finally getting to a stage where we've stopped chasing our tail, and we can start to think about getting involved with the international stuff. Because once we started, we just started getting hit with requests. We probably have a different slightly different model that is being imposed on us compared to yourselves, in that our national orthopedic hospital sends kids to us, so we have a constant stream of kids. So we've been busy, you know. But other than that, yeah, it's all good. It's all great. Thanks. I think that's everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
So I've been adding some links in the chat. There's a link also to the Pope Paraguay new chapter spotlight, and there's some questions. It sounds like Jeremy's interested in following up at some point about the process in Ireland, and there's some questions about Pope Paraguay. So let's see, where would be the best place to start? Maybe because the time is limited with Eric. Let's see. There's a question about the lower limb work that you're doing in Paraguay. And we've had some comments recently, some posts in the hub, people that are interested, and there's only a few chapters that I think have really put in significant efforts in that direction. And you guys have really done some incredible work. So maybe you can share how extensive of a process. It was a whole year just to get the first device.
Yeah, we had several phases in and I think it's a cyclic thing, right? In PO, where some years we focus a lot on research and development, and other years we have to execute and we have to generate the impact besides the research part behind of what this is all about, right? And we have the constant struggle of dedicating the funds of our donors to generating more knowledge or generating the impact that usually they want to see. So that year we invested about 1 year of industrial designer that's currently working on Germany. He finished university in Germany. He was a volunteer with us, and I think in 2016. Then he went and finished his studies in Germany and came back, and he worked. He started first with devices from several amputations like Sievert or Chopard, which are more like feet amputations, and they were good, but they were not usually the ones that generated the most disabilities within the users we had. And most of our users had the transtibial amputations, so below knee amputees. So he dedicated his work in developing the socket that we had to manufacture. And feet was we tried to divide in three steps, right? Which were socket, then the feet, and afterwards the pilon. I don't know how you call the tube.
Pylon.
I'm not sure in English. Yeah, how it's called?
Pylon.
Pylon, yeah. In Spanish is pilon, so it's pylon. And fun. It was funny because the pylon was the last part, but was the first part that we managed to manufacture here. We had a place that the metal work. We redesigned the device so it would fit what we thought that the lower part of the socket would be, and the upper part of the feet would be, and they could make it, and we could make it now here for about, I know it's like $40 or $50, and it's super nice steel, and it works great. It's super useful. So from the last part of pylon, we thought it was gonna be the hardest part. It was the easiest part because industrially it was easily done, right? And afterwards we said, okay, the feed is usually one that it's more streamlined in production anywhere. So we said, okay, let's buy the feed from a provider and make the variables of research less and less. So if something is failing, it's probably gonna be the new part, which is the socket, right? So we started to doing the socket, and we said, okay, let's try to do it as replicable as possible. So we tried to do first with measurements. It was really hard with only measurements. We do with 3D printerings, and it was really hard to do with 3D printing. So what we tried to do is use several traditional techniques and new techniques, so we used sometimes plaster, sometimes we used 3D scanning with the Kinect, and it still works great. With a little bit of retouching, you can do great stuff. And comparing it with the measurements you could get physically, it works. You can do really, really nice things. So we started doing it only 3D printing at first with PLA, then we tried PG, but we still thought that for we had to build a new 3D printer that could fit the socket. Afterwards, we just bought a bigger one. Then we did it in 2 parts. Crazy amount of work had to be done with that. But at the end, we felt that it was just keeping ourselves again in 3D printing as the only way that it could work. It was limiting the strength capacities of what we could do. So we start working with lamination. So we used fiberglass lamination from a guy that worked doing, I don't know, like RC cars lamination. I'm not sure what he did, but it was like something like that. And we're still working with him, and it works great. So you do the 3D printing with PLA, and then you try it on the user. It's everything fit. If you need to move some things, you can thermoform it a bit, and then you send it to lamination, and it's done. And it's a couple of lamination, and it's pretty cheap. And,
so the lamination is going over the 3D printed parts?
Yeah, over 3D printed parts.
Interesting. So it's kind of an external reinforcement. Are there any, are you using any kind of metal components? Like, is there a rod inside or anything?
No, nothing. Besides the pylon, which is the only metal component, nothing. It's just the house. Well, what we usually do, and because since we don't have the way to do the vacuum for the leg, we usually use another external leg. Usually is more like a joint, not ferrule, I don't know how you call it. Those like blue things that you use when you have like knee hurts. I cannot remember the name of those, but it's just an external thing to keep it fit, but
brace.
it's usually a snug fit.
Brace, yeah.
So,
Brace,
yeah.
And I missed a couple of the details about the pylon. What's the diameter of that?
Oh, I think we have it there, Ben, in our.
Just show us with your fingers.
Yeah, just about how big are we talking?
Like the pylon. The pylon might be, let's say, let me take 20 fingers this way.
Okay, all right.
It should be 6 centimeters in diameter.
Got it.
6, yeah, 6, 7, 8, yeah.
And you're
diameter.
using what is that made of?
Steel.
Steel, okay.
Yeah, steel. So it's carbon steel is probably less than 1020. So it's not nothing expensive or anything. It's since the actual first is really robust. The connections are really good. If you have real good alignment, you have to do the whole process during the fitting. And if you have the proper alignment, we've never had a leg that broke because of something going wrong with the pylon. One time we had a situation. We usually have like trial users where they are close to us and they're more familiar. They're not just a person that walks in and I want a leg, right? It's more, we talk together and we say we want to develop this part of the feet. So the only part that is used to get broken is something when we try. There's a knob that connects with the feet, and that knob usually when it's not properly aligned, it twists, and in a moment it just breaks the feet, breaks the knob, and it's probably because of the quality of the steel too. And we never know what the user is doing it right with it. So usually they're just sitting down, right? Or I just was walking and something happened.
You know, to add to it.
Sorry.
I was going to say, to add to what Eric's saying in the spotlight, he talks about they chose 10 users with 3 different amputation levels in the beginning to test the prototype. So there was this whole process.
Yeah.
And it sounds like today you guys have a high percentage of people that use the lower limb devices. If you had a guess of your annual device users, how many are lower limb these days?
I think now it's 60-40. Maybe within leg and upper limb. The thing is that usually the lower limb amputees are, well, what we found is that the person that's looking for a device is usually the person that had a traumatic accident, right? It's usually the person that was born with it without a hand or an arm or a leg. They have or at least here in our country, they have adapted and they live their lives as they want. So the device is more personal desire than a need in many ways. And so usually what happens with, again, within the people that have a traumatic experience, like a trauma in upper or lower, the upper limbs usually adapt to the daily life activities faster. But the people who have a lower limb amputation, they feel that they cannot move here in public transport. They cannot be independent in their house, do the chores, and it's a bigger thing. Here, practicality is a lot higher on the spectrum of need than aesthetics or things like that. People, yeah.
So Eric, I think we're losing Eric. Can you hear us, Eric?
I can hear you.
Okay, we were getting some lag there. I wanted to ask. There you go. Here, I'll turn mine off too. In the United States, we've all, at least so far, we have not really, most of us that I'm aware of, have not really delved into lower limbs. And at least a large part of the reason has to do with the kind of the risk sensitivities, because in our country, people love to start lawsuits. And we're concerned about, if a lower limb was to break and somebody gets hurt, would somebody get sued? Are there any concerns like that in Paraguay? What's the environment like there? And
it's, as I've seen in the US, quite many times working with people there and outside of prosthetics, in more medical realm, the US it's really lawsuit first, right? It's sadly that's the reality, that there's I think it's a good thing that you have your legal protection within everything you do, but at the same time, a lot of those things just make you scared before you can innovate and create new things. And as we always said within poets, we here in Paraguay, our situation with lawsuits is super low. It's getting bigger with medical things, but medical devices are so low regulated that we never had a standard to live up to, or regulations to live up to. But that didn't mean that we didn't have the standards that we set ourselves that were higher than the ones we saw anywhere in the world with the prosthetics, at least 3D printed prosthetics, and always having the complete knowledge for our users that what we were doing, right? It's something, it's a prototype, or it's not prototype, it's experimental, and you have a full guarantee that something happens, we will help you with it, and we will get your device and help you with it, and we have all the legal recourse that we use in order to protect ourselves, but at the same time guarantee them that we're not giving them whatever we made.
So that's interesting. So you in Paraguay, it sounds like you're presenting these as experimental devices, much like we do here in the US. That's exactly how we describe them, so that they're not formally classified as medical devices. They're considered experimental devices. Sounds like that's a difference in Ireland, where they are specifically certified to produce medical devices. So it's an interesting difference there, and how these are considered and the protections that are offered. I mean,
well, and here in the States, the FDA says these are, of course, medical devices. And by the way, in response to e-NABLE, they've given us guidance that says don't do lower limbs. However, I think this PLA plus fiberglass is a really interesting technique to think about, because it might be a way.
Well, it's really, I mean, it's more about, I'm trying to understand that, but it's more about the pylon, isn't it? I mean, the pylon is what's giving it the strength and rigidity. That's the core. That's like the bone in the middle of the leg, right?
But that's easy.
I think, yeah. But at the same time,
I'm just saying, whatever you put around that doesn't have to be strong. I mean, it could be PLA or whatever, because it's the pylon that's going to hold you up, right?
No. It's a socket. It's a socket and the connection between the socket and the pylon that works. The interface.
Got it. Okay.
Usually the hardest part to validate as a something that functions is the interface between the body and the That's
So the
material.
socket and the interface to that pylon are critical, but then kind of the rest of the, well, I don't know what you'd call it, the fairing or the shell around the leg, that's more kind of decorative at that point, right?
Yeah, if it's outside the pylon, yeah, that's decorated.
Okay.
100% decorated. So,
Got it. I just
yeah,
want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Yeah, the outer, the socket, the pylon, and the feet, the three of them work in their way to sustain the full weight of the
Got
body.
it. Got it.
But usually the feet we did works with Kansas State University. There was I'm not sure it was a PhD student that was working with us. I think Ben has the study in the, yeah. So we did that, but we tried it here, and we still had better outcomes with the commercial one, and it worked better with the pilot.
So you're using a commercial foot?
Yeah, it's a commercial foot, but it's super
Okay.
standard. Yeah, it's
Got
not.
it.
We also had a donation from like a bunch of feet that were just discarded, but was discarded because I think not even discarded. They were stopped using from a nonprofit somewhere. I cannot even. It wasn't from the U.S., but they didn't use it because they closed it, and they brought it here. And so a lot of the feet we had are from there. So we're still using those until we have a proper feed developed. Yeah.
I've added in the chat a link to a photo. It's also in the chapter spotlight, but just if anybody's curious, I apologize, it's a really long Facebook link, but that's what that is. John?
I'm sorry, while we're on the technology of your lower limb prosthetic, this notion of using 3D printing and PLA for iterative fitting and then wrapping it with fiberglass is a new idea to me. Is that new to you, or is that a standard practice among prosthetists? Eric.
It's for us, for me, the question?
Yes.
No, it's what's a new thing? Yeah. No, we usually
They came up with it.
Yeah, they use thermoplastic, either thermoplastic, they do the casting, and then they use a thermoplastic with a vacuum machine that makes the whole socket, and then you have to do a bunch of trimming of the thermoplastic you're using. But it's not like 3D printing with PLA. It was a new approach that.
So how do you apply the fiber sort of layers? Is it like with a heat gun? How exactly are you putting it on there?
We actually have another person doing that. So it's
okay.
not. Yeah. It's a guy that actually he fiberglasses RC cars or RC planes and stuff like that.
So you send the device to him, and he does it and sends it back to you.
Yeah, that's
okay.
true. And it's super cheap it's about, I know, less than $30 or $40 to fiberglass it.
Well, that's huge. Have you documented this process?
Yeah. We have it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a name for what he's doing, and I'd like to know more about what that is, whatever process he's using to apply that surface. If you could let us know.
I will. I'm writing that down to find out.
Yeah, because then we could search to see if there's an equivalent kind of a service in other regions that would be worth exploring.
Robbie commented that the situation with litigation in the EU is a real problem. Have there been any issues in Paraguay related to that? I mean, I know that you guys have a public healthcare system which is different than the US, but maybe similar to what Robbie O'Connor is working with. I'm curious, your relationship with the medical healthcare system. I mean, in a few minutes, you're going to have an exam related
actually
to
healthcare. It's actually healthcare. That's salud, like public healthcare. That's the name of my exam right now. Yeah, I'm 50, 10 to 1. I'm leaving, and I
okay, good. Yeah, don't be late.
So yeah, no. We never had a lawsuit here in all our years. With good and bad experiences, we've never had it. We had situations where maybe a hand would break or a lower limb would break. It was not catastrophic, right? Usually, when you have a catastrophic event, maybe that's more a thing. But at least our devices were more a progressive moment. And I'm pretty sure that the ones that got the device broken first, they were part of our first group, that they knew that they had to try it, and they knew that we were working with them for that, and they were doing crazy things too. So it was not, we also say both with upper limbs and lower limbs, we say what they can do with it, and we make them sign it. So it's like you cannot use machinery, you cannot do lift heavy things, you cannot do with things that could harm you and stuff like that. But then after they get their leg, they get to a motorbike and ride home, and they send us a picture. I don't know, going up a stair with an air conditioner on their shoulder, up some stairs. No, but not like stairs, like stair. I don't know what the difference, but like the stairs that you put to a wall and then take the air conditioner with you. Well, okay, so those kind of things that you say, of course, you're not supposed to do that. But just imagine that guy did not have that.
Well, it's funny, but I guess that's part of the concern, right? Because people do like to push these things and see what can I get away with, you know?
Yeah, they do, but I think and it's the same thing with medicine too, and with doctors. The main way that you could avoid a lawsuit is by having the proper communication with your patient, and it sounds stupid, it sounds simple, it sounds
you're right.
that it's something that maybe it's just the easy way out to say, and it's easier than protocols or whatever you can say, but it is the truth. And I've seen it firsthand with patients that you could do good or you could do bad, and both being a medical about to be a medical practitioner, the doctor, and being a patient, both in both situations, having a clear communications of expectations is the way that you could avoid at least a lawsuit that is avoidable. If someone wants to sue you, then they'll find a way to do it. You win or you lose. But if they don't want to sue you, usually they don't understand what happened, and they don't have a response or whatever they have. So I believe that having, as we always say, being one-on-one, talking with them all the time through WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever they need, and having a dedicated person for that. That's I think is the first barrier, at least, to not having a problem for all these years. Okay, 10-1. I have to leave. I have to do my whole setup.
Thank you so much
My
for
whole medical
joining
setup.
us today. And
No.
congratulations on the new chapter spotlight, and good luck. You left medical school to chase after this whole adventure with e-NABLE, and now you're coming back around full circle. So we're honored that you're a part of the team and the community.
Super.
Thanks,
And I'll
Eric.
try to be next week. If there's a spotlight next week, or let me know.
Will do.
John,
You're muted, John.
That's it. That's right.
John's
Okay.
muted. And the rest of us will continue on. Robbie and Barry, we can
Bye,
follow
Eric.
up with some questions. Thanks, Eric, and
Bye-bye. See ya.
wonderful job.
Thank you.
So maybe we can follow up with, there's a couple comments earlier.
If you don't mind, Ben, I wonder if we could just hear from, because we heard from Eric on the kind of the risk and averseness and litigation kind of side of things, but I never got to hear from Robbie about how that is in Ireland, if you don't mind.
We're subject to the EU regulations, and the definition of a medical device in the EU for some reason is different to as it would be in the States. So the legislation is written brilliantly in that it catches everything. So the best analogy I heard was the lollipop stick is a lollipop stick until the doctor sticks it in your mouth, and then it's a medical device. So this is how, so if it has a function that's any way related to medical use, it's a medical device. So we were audited by our national, the Health Products Regulatory Authority. So it was a bit stressful at the time. They came in to say, and they're great, they were lovely. And they sat down with us, they explained everything, that they have a role which they have to monitor the activity in the country now. So in Ireland, we have a very large medical device industry, surprisingly large for our 5 million or so people. I think we make a ridiculous proportion of the amount of stents and hip replacements on the planet, never mind just in Europe. So what we did was we argued they're experimental. That doesn't really work. We argued that they were a functional toy, that it was about children's self-esteem, and they were open to that argument, but they knew, they were just, we let you argue that, but we're not convinced. So they were happy to leave it that we would fulfill all the requirements of a medical device manufacturer, but without going the last step, I think. So what we did was,
sorry, what is that last step?
The last step is effectively setting up a private company and making these things. So what we did was, it took us the best part of a year. We took the some of the designs, we went through the CE marking procedure as a private company would do. So we documented everything. We did full risk assessments. It's not particularly, I wouldn't say it's not particularly difficult. It is difficult. It's just slow, And so we then we weren't a legal entity. So to become a legal entity, we had to set up as a charity, and there's a national charity regulator in the country. So we went through that process. We registered as a medical device manufacturer, and then we developed all the documentation to effectively CE mark the devices that we hand out. Now, the difficulty is the whole litigation stuff, that once you do that, you're fully liable for everything. And we do get the parents to sign off. Now, our clientele, our recipients are they're predominantly children. As a matter of the vast majority are children, between the ages of maybe 3 to maybe 13, 14. And what happens is the kids are entitled to full commercial prosthetics under our National Health Service. But up until the 13, 14-year-olds, they get the big silicone aesthetic functionless hand, which the children won't wear. So it's really only when they get to about 13, 14 or so, when the prosthetists think that the child has stopped growing, they get the carbon fiber, arm with the Autobox stuff, which is great. So we really fill that gap. So it's the gap between.
And so now that you are certified or have that CE mark, have you had any issues with litigation so far? Or is it just the potential? Okay.
We haven't. And
and just because we have a few, before we lose Barry here, we have a few kind of different chapter leaders from different regions. Is anybody here aware of any kind of litigation ever related to e-NABLE? Because I'm not. I just want to know if anybody here has ever heard of anything happening. Okay.
I have not. I mean, again, my involvement has been obviously as a small chapter providing prosthetics. And what I was just sharing in the chat, when we talk with parents and when we talk with others about the work we're doing here, being at a school, and our school is very unique in terms of our educational model. And one of the things that we talk about with providing prosthetics for particularly adolescents is the opportunity to form those patterns in the brain that prepare them for using, for having both arms or both hands at some point in the future. And if they miss that critical period of time when, the brain is forming those patterns, it's much more difficult, later in life, as an adult in particular, to basically go back and form those patterns. So we make it very clear that our intent is not to provide necessarily a medical grade prosthetic, but a prosthetic that gives that youth the opportunity to start to form those brain-based patterns that are really key. And I've seen, the second young man that we handed an arm off to came to our school, and he was throwing a ball with his prosthetic within an hour.
See, that's a really nice way of presenting it. Not only because I like thinking of it that way better than thinking of it as a toy, but
Right.
it also encourages the use of the device. Because when the user thinks of it that way, it's going to encourage them to use it more often because they kind of feel like they're training their brain. You know, I really like that.
That's
So,
a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, I added in the chat, there was a really great video that Pope Paraguay put together as part of this campaign with musical adapters. I'll share my screen really briefly, but they highlighted the brain development and the role of music, and worked through how the adapter was sort of a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So I added the link.
Unfortunately, I have to go. This is our first day back on campus. I have to go to a faculty meeting. So it has been great getting to see
Barry.
you guys. Yeah, I look forward to following up with you, John and Ben, about the opportunity to sort of be ambassadors, mentors, or something with some other high schools. So thank you guys again for all the work that you do that makes it possible for us to do what we do here. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Barry.
much, Barry.
Take care.
Thanks so much, Barry. See you soon.
That point, just to give you some indication of the situation we have in the EU as well. The Health Products Regulatory Authority also covers educational devices, so
So that doesn't get you around it.
they watch everything because
No, I'm curious, Robbie, when they came in and did this audit that you talked about, and then that led to you eventually pursuing full certification, did they help you through that? Were they guiding
they
you?
did. Yeah,
See, I find that interesting that they're not just there to like enforce the rules, but
yeah.
they're there to help you through it.
No, they were excellent. They really were. And to be fair, their website includes guides of how to go through the process, right down to how to certify, everything like that, how to register. It's an excellent website. The EU regulations insist that everything is publicly accessible. So in theory, if we had an issue with one of the devices and we needed to recall, it would go up on their website. So they really, and they were excellent, and they were very kind to us because we were quite intimidated, but there was 4 of them and they said, no, listen, we think this is brilliant. This is great stuff. They appreciated the fact, which I thought was great, was that the model was new, that they were saying, no, hang on, we need to get our heads around this, the 3D printed, people printing their own medical devices. And, you know, this is something that our system isn't necessarily geared up for. So they could see this as something that they had to learn from as well. So
and Robbie, in our country, many of the professional prosthetists are frankly hostile to what we're doing, both because what we do is of lower physical quality and because the publicity we have allowed through and the press reports give the impression that we devalue what the prosthetists do, which we don't, by the way. But how are your relationships with the professional prosthetists?
They're excellent. We, again, you see, we're probably very lucky in that it's a small country. There's only 5 million of us. We have one national, well, it's not so much an orthopedic hospital. We're kind of spread all over the place. But there's one place where they make the prosthetics, and it's run by Autobach. Effectively, run that clinic, and the prostheticians in there are very open to sending the children to us. So what happened, and it's basically, you can imagine the scenario. The child comes in at 2 or 3, the option available isn't necessarily the optimum one. And they say, well, here, hang on, go talk to the guys in 3D Assist. They'll make you a hand. And then, they know they're going to see that child back when the child is 12, 13, 14 or whatever. So
that's very interesting.
It's nice. And we've been involved with 1 or 2 other kind of one-off projects with the guys in Kappa Hospital. So, they're very, very open to the relationship because it's kind of win-win. Nobody wants to see a child leaving with a heavy silicone hand that they're not going
to use. It really is a nice symbiotic relationship.
It's
Robbie, remind me, do you have medical background?
no, we're all mechanical engineers, and for
And
the
yet
worst type.
well, kudos to Ireland. You know, Jeremy,
Yeah,
to your
that's great.
point, it's quite possible that the FDA in the United States would be supportive if there was someone in e-NABLE, and I don't think it's you or me, and I don't know who it is, who was willing to go through the whole drill. They have said that to us, that it's not that hard, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a huge commitment that Robbie and Eric have made, which...
Well, here's the problem as I recall it, and I might be off on this, but I thought that the way the FDA does it in our country is that they're not just reviewing the device or the product, but they're reviewing the production facilities and process and everything. And we can't guarantee the kind of consistency they're looking for, because it could be happening in anybody's home on any kind of 3D printer that we don't have control over. And I thought that was an issue.
Well, it is, but apparently that was the norm in Ireland until they started dealing with Robbie. And they said, well, okay, maybe we do need to.
Well, it certainly
sure
sounds like they seem to be very forward thinking, which is wonderful. I mean, I don't know that folks in our country tend to be as good about embracing the inevitable forthcoming technological shifts, but maybe it might be worth the discussion, John. Yeah.
You know, Robbie did say that it was device users potentially printing their own. So that perspective, I think, you know, whether it's somebody that's helping, you know, providing sort of services to help a sort of a client make.
Well, and even if not now, that's certainly going to be the case more and more in the future. And they recognize that anybody could be printing their own medical device. Yeah.
And there could be a cultural thing here as well in that. In Ireland, where we're great for sure, we'll just walk around this. We'll find a solution and that. So, whereas I know I've worked abroad in the EU, and culturally, even into the UK, it would be different. Yeah, we'll walk away to suit, and we'll get because they to be fair to the HPRA, again, they came in with the attitude that this was good stuff, and there was no way they were going to try and stop it. So we were trying to find a way around to get it to work.
Well, we have some friends in the UK who went through a similar kind of a certification process. And I don't know how the process compared to what you went through, but they did have to do something like that.
It would have been the same pre-Brexit. The difficult, and I can see some of the comments from asking about the system it's all self-regulation effectively. You declare yourself or you as a medical device manufacturer, and then you're subject to all the regulations that come with them. Any device you produce has to be CE marked, which means you have to have all the technical documentation, risk assessment, and all that sort of stuff done for each one of those devices. So, if somebody claimed that they were, if somebody self-certifies and then violates one of these things, who would it be that would come after you and enforce the violation? It could be the individual.
Okay.
That you're liable then for any subsequent litigation. So that's how the CE marking system would work. That it's at class 1 medical devices, which our devices are. There is no overarching monitoring group. If it was class 2, we'd have to get the national body then to check that the CE marking was legitimate and it was done properly.
I see.
Do you certify each device made or device model?
Model, just one. We just basically certified the unlimited arm. So, and in fairness, the certification itself isn't that significant. We did some stress analysis, with student projects, but it's largely down to it's a risk assessment that involves about 40 or so questions that you have to go through, and it's really about good design and not doing anything silly with them, that way.
Is this certification transferable, or does it apply only to you as an entity?
It's effectively us as an entity certifying the product that we handed out. So yeah, it doesn't, no, I know what you mean. It doesn't move with the design. Now I can send you over our technical file and you can change any reference to 3D Assist to your group. And if you're happy to use that as your documentation, that I wouldn't say that would be fine.
You can
That would be
self-certify
okay.
too.
Everybody can self-certify. The difficulty is, and we haven't really dealt with this. We're doing the typical, I wouldn't say the Irish thing on it. We're kind of going, it hasn't been an issue yet. We haven't had anybody come after us in terms of litigation.
Well, I for one would love to see that documentation, Robbie, just to understand what's in it. That would be great if you'd share it.
It's fair, yeah. And if you find any typos, feel free to fix them. it's the crux, the real important part is this risk assessment. And
is that something they give you? You like download a series of questions? Yeah. Okay.
It's all on the website. It really is brilliant. It's once you dredge through it, once you work your way through it, it's not too bad. Now there are some other issues that we're worried about coming down the line, in that the new medical device regulations specify you have to have a quality assurance standard within now we'd have the Internet ISO 9000 or IS 13485, which is the medical device quality standard.
And you said that's forthcoming?
The new, we have a feeling it's coming down the line that they're going to insist that you have a validated quality assurance system. Now, if they do that, we're in trouble, because that means we'd have to then get an external body in to validate our
and then you're going to run into the
assurance.
same issue I was talking about, where, hey, it could be different facilities, different printers. How do you ensure that consistency of production quality?
Exactly. Yeah, we'd have to track every roll of PLA that came into the place. We'd have to
probably set up a production facility, a dedicated facility.
Now, we might do that, you know, because it'd be a great exercise for a student body to do, to set up a proper. And one of the other things that we've been really, really fortunate with is because a lot of our graduates would have gone into the medical device manufacturing in Ireland, we were able, but we don't have to make too many phone calls to find out how does this work. So that might be a route. I know if you keep things nice and simple and you don't deviate too much, conforming to IS, the standard medical, wouldn't be too much of a jump for a university. For a guy on his own making the odd hand for local kids, it'd be a complete nightmare. So it's an unfortunate kind of thing, and it's a secondary, which really makes it unfortunate, you know, in that we'd be the biggest obstacle would be our non-validated quality assurance thing. It's a system they're not looking at the device at all, you know that way. So.
Alexander asks if you need any kind of case studies or medical tests as part of that risk assessment.
No, but effectively what you're doing is it's the fundamental questions about the design function, and we did some strength testing, we did some stress analysis. But again, and it's very important, we're giving this to a child who's going to do nothing more than pick up a small ball with it. It's not being given to an adult who might climb a ladder, like Eric's friend with the air conditioner on his shoulder. That doesn't happen. So, and we send it with full, instructions and all that stuff. So it's not
that's an interesting difference, because that does certainly change things. You're right. I mean, adults are going to do things that kids wouldn't.
And our, like, we'd argue that the design is fundamentally made to break, that we deliberately don't over-engineer. So if the child falls, the fingers go, well, and we just post out new fingers. It's no problem.
So this is unique to Ireland, it sounds like, because you guys are really focused on the younger folks. And then Autobach through that facility is pretty much handling all the adult prosthetic needs in the country, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So we've had, we made the guitar adapter for an Autobach arm for one of the 14 or 15-year-old young lad. So, and yeah, that'd be quite normal that we'd see a kid that we would have made a Spider-Man arm for with his new Autobach. And it's normally around the 14, 15 years when they start getting big, you know, that way, and or when they start, well, they stop getting so big so quick, you know. So
I
How
would be
about financially?
surprised
Do
if-
you get compensated by the government or private or?
we're because I know we're a registered charity, so we just get, it's all by donation. So we it's another nice thing about the universities is that we get our advertising students and marketing students to fundraise, and it's win-win. It works out really, really well. Our overheads are quite small because we're not slow to use the university's printers.
You're not
You know.
charging, and you don't
No.
charge anything for the devices. Yeah.
And that keeps things, because we have to produce an annual report to the charities regulator, to keep it really, really simple. We take no money, we give no money, we there's no salaries, there's no nothing. We take money, we spend it on material and printers, and that's it.
This
So-
is all
Very
under the
nice.
umbrella of the university.
That
not
kind
quite.
of is and it kind of isn't. And this is that beautiful gray area that we're comfortable in, you know. The university has been great, and they're very supportive, but we're not an official part of the university as such. We're more like a student society. Yeah, you can see we're literally tiptoeing on this legal thing constantly because
I think that's the secret of our success, to the extent that we have success, is that we
Well,
find
and
ways.
And it sounds like the climate in Ireland is particularly amenable to that, which is nice.
I think so, yeah. Because I think it's like now we play the game when people want to see us, we have presentations and we use we look for the cutest child we could have found, and we really pile her on thick, and but people are great. People just row in and say, "No, hang on, this is good stuff. There's no reason to stop this stuff." You know that way. So, yeah, we're recently changed in terms of, we used to be the Institute of Technology in Tala. Our university name has changed and we've merged now. So we're now one of the largest universities in the country, but because we're merged, three institutions. And they have seen this community engaged nature of what we're doing. So we're hoping to kind of step up again and start maybe looking at research and community engaged learning and computer engaged. And I think that's for a university-based group like ourselves, I think that's where the strength is, because it's absolute win-win every time. And Barry referred to it there our students gain more than the kids that come in. And you guys know all this, you know.
That goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the session about how, you know, the higher level benefits of what we're doing and how people are connecting online. Yeah.
You know, Robbie, I spent a week in a workshop at Ottobock in Berlin. And I spent one day touring the Ottobock Museum, which I recommend, with one of their lead R&D guys. We really got along, even though he was very skeptical about e-NABLE. But one of the things he did keep saying was, yeah, maybe for kids, because he didn't quite say this, but because, of course, Ottobock doesn't have reasonable solutions for kids. And in Germany, the adults all get, I assume, Ottobock or other medical grade prosthetics. What you have is apparently, is to my knowledge, a sanctioned collaboration between your volunteer group with government oversight and Ottobock. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are Ottobock clinics in other parts of the world that could recognize and embrace that same symbiosis when it comes to underage learning amputees versus mature covered amputees. So just to plant a seed, I would really, at some point, you should have that conversation to see whether you want to expose what you're doing as a potentially replicable model, and Ottobock as a potential vector for spreading this where it'll go.
Yeah, that could be great, because as you said, it's the perfect matchup. You know, again, you can see we're still in that kind of keeping our heads below the radar type mode as well. So, but yeah, I'm
And they
definitely
already have
working
the
it.
global presence. So
That's
yeah,
right.
there's a really interesting match there.
And, you know, to go up a level, and I see that this has been a fascinating discussion, but to go up a level, I think that while we've identified this pattern for, let's say, countries with good medical coverage and auto-box systems, more generally, we've also clarified the pattern that what e-NABLE is good at and good for is filling the gaps that do exist. Now, you know, in Paraguay, there's a lower limb gap, and so they're filling that gap. But you know, the point is, I think that may be at a higher level. What we do is say, because we're off the books, because we're volunteers, because we're improvisational, because we're doing it in a way that makes us less risk averse. In every region, you say, what's the underregulated, underserved community that we might be able to help with? It's
And
very interesting.
to that extent, you know, MASV's effort in Lithuania with the face shields,
Same kind of thing. That's right.
which became sort of kind of the national collaboration, was really exciting. I do want to pass it before we end up. Alexander is in Romania, MASV is in Lithuania. Do either of you guys have any questions for Robbie, and specifically about this situation with the EU and how to proceed?
And there were a couple of questions in chat that we didn't get to, so maybe ask about those guys.
I see. Do we do any case studies of medical tests? No, there's not. But guys, if you want to just email me, I don't know where my email address is.
I'll add it in the archive. I'll add everybody's email contact.
And I'll gladly send on it's a technical file. It's called. It's grand. It's not that. Although it's been a while since I looked, it'll probably bring back flashbacks of, oh my god. We never give them to adults. We have maybe 4 adults or so we've made hands for. Like what?
So if an adult comes to you, you would generally send them to the clinic where they can get a professional device made? We'll gladly make them one, or they'll go to Autobock as well. But your national healthcare system covers that for anybody who needs one. They don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Like we had a young woman came who had sepsis, who we made a hand for her. She then went on to get a full myoelectric one, and so we filled the gap of time that she had to wait.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And
so there are no extra certifications for adults? Like it's the same as with kids, or is there something different, like a risk assessment with a case study?
One of those gray areas?
It's the same process, believe it or not. It's the same document you'd be using for your CE marking.
So the fact
no
that you've
medical
made a
case
couple,
studies.
No medical. No, as a class 1 medical device, there is no medical element within the certification. Because the class 1 medical device would cover things like splints or you said the piece of wood that holds down your tongue when the doctors look.
So it's things like making sure it doesn't have materials that your skin would react to and things like that.
Very low risk. Now the risk assessment does ask about stuff like this. I can't remember the proper term for skin sensitivities with what you're using. So
that makes sense.
So you'd use the hypoallergenic padding
foam
you get from your pharmacy.
Basically, I have 2 worries for the adults. Number one is if somebody I made a device for tries to put his hand through a wall and the device breaks. And since it's PLA that might be printed in a certain orientation, when the device breaks, part of it might start stabbing the user. That's one side of the risk that I'm concerned. And the other one being with certain designs, with certain gauntlets, I am afraid if the wrist pin is not properly aligned, you could develop various issues from repeat use, like the carpal tunnel, simply because it's not properly aligned. So are those covered, or do you need a case study? Or it's a bit surprising that you don't need a medical case study for the users.
Well, there's another element here that we haven't talked about, not case studies. I find myself wondering about the involvement of medical professionals. So when you guys make devices there in Ireland, Robbie, is there any involvement from like an occupational therapist or a prosthetist to do a fitting or anything like that?
We've had one, yeah, but it was an unusual one. It was for somebody who was based in Northern Ireland. So it was a UK or occupational therapist. But no, we've never had any input from medical. And
okay.
I can understand they are keeping it what they perceive as a safe distance.
The medical professionals?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they know once they engage, they're in some way condoning. Endorsing.
Okay.
So there is that sensitivity there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For the medical folks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, from the medical people. The prosthesions, yeah, they're in CAP would be unusual in terms of them sending kids to us, because they're effectively allowing the parent to make contact. So it's completely outside there. They're not writing a prescription for so you can see why we are in this unusual gray area, and I can appreciate all the questions Alexander's making. We give them to an adult, but when you're giving them to an 18-year-old and you're asking them to sign a disclaimer, part of the disclaimer is, listen, this is a piece of plastic, and
you're not going to punch yourself your way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, when we talk about these bigger, entities, bigger companies getting involved in everything, and when you get into these, risk considerations, it's, I don't know. I mean, it's very different than, how do I say this? I don't know. It's just, it seems like the environment there is different than what we're dealing with, but I don't know. It seems like you guys have found a nice middle ground there that's working.
I think
well.
I think we're in that gray area, and people are happy just to leave us. And
exactly.
This is why it's a tricky one, because you're it'd be very easy. And the difficulty we always have, it's very easy to say no to things like things like what we're doing, that way. So, and we have to be careful about who we approach and who we ask, because the default and the safe thing is to say no, stop what you're doing.
Right.
But this is
why.
I
mean, it's when I think about your situation there, you've got this big, I don't remember what you called it, a clinic or something being run by Autobach. I mean, let's face it, ultimately it's money that makes the world go round, and it's always that gets involved here. Well, in your case, you've got a national healthcare system. They're getting paid, they're going to keep making their money for making all the adult prostheses, and they don't have a product they focus on for children. So it's this great synergy. Now we don't have that here. We don't have they don't have that automatic income stream from the government. So there's some interesting differences here to think about. Got to follow the money, as they say.
And I wonder about maybe as Barry alluded to earlier, the emphasizing the educational side, that you're in effect training the child.
Mm-hmm.
We know we're dancing around the real definition, but you could say that, and say it has function. It's a limited function, but its primary function is about the child's esteem, and it's about this learning. And I've seen the academic papers on this notion of giving the child where their extremities are in preparation for a future prosthetic. So that seems to work quite well. It's a tricky one, and for the university,
it's a device for training and psychological reinforcement.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's color anything you want, but if we can get it out, and there's 50 kids walking around with these things who wouldn't have had them if we got bogged down in the definitions. And the definitions and the legislation weren't written for one-off 3D printed devices, and they weren't written for this. And this is why our HPRA were quite good. They sat and they said, no, hang on, we need to learn what the hell this is about, because this is new. This is not what we're used to. We have kids who've come through who are printing their own devices, and I know we all have those. Nowhere in the legislation sorry, the EU legislation, does it cover a person making their own device?
Robbie,
Or-
you're lucky you have prosteticians. In Romania, we don't even have that medical term at all. That's not a thing here.
You just have doctors.
Still Europe. Yeah.
That may be an
it is
opportunity,
interesting.
Alexander.
What Robbie's saying, it's not that much different than what Mazvi was doing with the face shields in Lithuania. I mean, it's basically saying, have a mask, but here is this extra thing that sort of fits into your needs. And the doctors were coming and it wasn't the hospitals, but it was sort of the individuals that were identifying a need and then approaching Mazvi and his team. It sounds sort of like that with what you're.
We had a very similar, with the masks. We spent all last summer making the masks. We made about 9,000 masks, and we were delivering them into our national hospitals. So
that's impressive.
It's funny. It's almost. I think I'm not sure. Again, I kind of come back to the cultural thing. In that, in Ireland, speed limits. When it suits, we've an unusual attitude to rules and regulations, and that when it chooses and when it makes sense to kind of push them aside and move on, we're quite quick to do that, which was great. So this is why I think we're kind of fairly comfortable where we are in this kind of gray zone.
Yeah, I think Jeremy doesn't agree, but I think e-NABLE US is in a similar niche. The work that we do here is in this gray area. The FDA has sort of marked out the gray area. They said upper limbs mechanical, not lower limbs and not motorized. But that has given us the room to do what we do. I don't, on average, I don't think it's as well organized or institutionalized as what you're doing in your country of 5 million. But I do think that we also have found our area of gray and we do what we can.
Yeah. And I believe that because we've gone through the motions of doing the risk analysis and, getting the documentation right, they can, you just know the guys can relax a bit. They know they're not dealing with, we're not going to do anything silly. They know, let's say the whole myoelectrics, we're not going near that because that immediately puts you into class 2. And, it's just not, we're not going to do that, So, they know we're not going to do that. So I think that in itself, they know they can trust the organization to be sensible and not to be doing anything silly. That makes a massive
difference. They now have a paper trail that shows that they've done due diligence also.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Any last questions from Mazvi or Alexander, and we'll wrap up?
I wanted to ask you if you had any doctors that perform amputations approach you about unusual cases or kids that might need your devices.
Not for us.
So you get all the cases through direct contact, not from doctors.
We get them from prosteticians or from Facebook. From actually the large.
Nice.
The largest we got was 2 summers ago. We had one child played, and the child used to play for a amputee soccer. And that summer we had a full team in with us. So it kind of suits maybe. I know in Ireland everybody knows everybody, and our social network outside Facebook is very effective. So people are very quick to say, "Oh no, I know somebody," or "I know somebody who knows somebody." But I found that they were excellent. Those sort of informal groups are far more effective than the formal medical route.
Yeah.
Like we've a very unusual project. I'm sorry, I know we're pushed for time, but there's a child hospice in Dublin, and it's the only hospice in the country. And we did a project for them this year to look at scanning artifacts from sick kids, like footprints and handprints. Now that only came about because of our our link with the 3D printing, and they were asking about, well, we're not sure what 3D printing is, we're not sure what 3D scanning is, but we see you guys do this. Can you guys look after? So we looked into scanning these artifacts for them and opening up the potential then for future printing in whatever way they see appropriate, you know. So, but I think that was largely because of the informal network we've used. I think the other thing, and it's the strength of the charity, having charity status. I don't know how difficult it is outside Ireland. It's fairly easy. The website is excellent. It's easy to get through, but it elevates the status of your group to the extent that people know that you know, you're being, you know, you're not being audited, but you have to keep accounts, and that your motivations are in the same vein as everybody else. So those things have really made a massive difference to us.
Fantastic.
So the doctor thing, yeah, I don't think we've seen it. We've spoken to any doctors in 5 years, but a couple of prostheses though.
Robbie, I would love to see the documentation you mentioned also.
Absolutely. What I'll do is,
you first.
sorry, I'll compile all our documentation and then the documentation from the national body, and just to show you how well it's laid out in terms of it's step by step. You know, it's really
Dynamite.
Amazing. And I'll follow up with you, Robbie, to see if you're interested in a chapter spotlight. It sounds like the model that you guys have would be really helpful for especially chapters in the EU. So maybe if that's something you're interested in, we can.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, lovely.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Lovely to meet you all.
Until next time. See ya.
See ya. Cheers.